On Halloween night in 2015, Tiffany James returned home to her apartment after trick or treating with her 7-year-old twin daughters. Candy buckets were still in their hands as the girls followed their mother up to their apartment door, completely unaware that someone was waiting for them in the dark. This wasn't a Halloween prank gone wrong, and this wasn't a random act of violence. It was the culmination of years of control, threats, and a bitter custody battle that was decided just one day before. Tiffany's children, still in their Halloween costumes, watched their mother collapse in front of them, covered in blood. Who would be capable of doing something like this? Welcome to the True Crime Nurse, everybody. My name is Kat, and I'm a registered nurse who loves all things nursing and true crime. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell before you go. All right, friends, let's get into today's case. Tiffany James was born on August 18th, 1980 in Tampa, Florida to her parents Roslyn and Turner. It didn't work out between her parents, so Tiffany lived with her grandmother in Brandon, which is a suburb just outside of Tampa. Tiffany grew up very close with her Aunt Vicky, who is also in Brandon, and she told everyone that her Aunt Vicky was literally her second mom. She went to Hillsborough High School in Tampa, and she made friends so easily because she was very friendly and very loving. Like many teenagers do, Tiffany fell head over heels in love with another student named Derek. On July 28th, 1998, the couple welcomed their first son, Derek Jr., at just 18 years old. They were young and had so much to learn, but their families have shared that they were incredible parents right away. Some people are just born with the natural instinct and they have what it takes to be a great parent, and Tiffany had it. In April 2002, they welcomed their second son, Darian, and these boys were the apple of her eye. The relationship between Tiffany and Derek unfortunately didn't work out, but they were able to keep their focus on the boys and reportedly co-parented really well together. Tiffany wanted the very best for her children, and she knew that going back to school would help her accomplish that. She went to a community college and then to Remington to get her cosmetology license because she had always dreamt of opening up her own hair salon someday. According to her children and her family, her relationship with God really guided her in the decisions that she made, and she made it a point to make sure that her children knew this too. Friends and family say that Tiffany was warm and friendly, and she worked really hard to maintain relationships not only with her siblings and immediate family, but also her extended family. I don't know about you, but that's not easy to do if you have a big family. Tiffany's brother, Darrell Humphrey, talked about how devoted she was to her children and how she tried to make the best of difficult situations. Being a single mom comes with challenges, and despite adoring her boys, Tiffany felt like there was a missing piece in her life. In 2007, Tiffany's life took a pivotal turn when she met Darrell Williams. At the time, Tiffany was about 28 years old and Darrell was in his early 40s. Darrell was working as a tradesman working at a place called Mosaic, and this was actually a chemical plant in Riverview, Florida. This was a blue-collar job that provided him a stable income, which was also very attractive to Tiffany. Both Tiffany and Darrell had children from previous relationships when they met, and she felt like he was everything that she had been praying for. She was grateful to meet a man that provided for himself and his children. Although he was 14 years older than her, this gave him a level of maturity and life experience that, in her opinion, brought a lot to the table. The two began dating and eventually moved in together. They seemed really happy at first, and Tiffany's family initially welcomed Darrell, hoping that he would be a good partner and father figure to their now blended family. That same year that they met, she fell pregnant and was so surprised and excited to find that she was having twins. She couldn't have been more thrilled to have her two boys and now her two girls, and Darrell was both surprised and excited too. He proposed, and Tiffany felt like her life had become better than she could have ever dreamt. Diamond and Denia were born in the spring of 2008. The girls were always dressed in the most stylish outfits, oftentimes matching. These little girls were like their mom's little dolls because she loved dressing them up, and they were beautiful little mini-me's of their mom. Even with her hands pretty full, Tiffany had the girls in cheer, and the boys were enrolled in a private Catholic school, which just tells you how hard Tiffany worked to provide the very best for her children. However, beneath the surface, not everything was picture perfect. Over time, tensions grew in Tiffany and Darrell's relationship. Darrell had a well-known controlling streak and a history of volatile behavior that was thoroughly documented by family, friends, and the courts. Tiffany's loved one said that Darrell's behavior towards Tiffany had become increasingly controlling and abusive, especially as Tiffany was trying to assert her own independence. Despite these troubles, though, Tiffany's primary focus always remained her children. She continued to work in the Tampa area at a hair salon and take care of her kids, trying her very best to co parent with Daryl, even as their romantic relationship was beginning to break down. By 2013, after about 5 years together, Tiffany and Daryl's relationship had completely fallen apart. Daryl moved out of the home and the two went their separate ways, but as expected, they would remain connected through their children, Diamond and Anaya. Daryl's behavior then became increasingly disturbing. Detectives later uncovered several troubling incidents in the months that led up to the murder. For example, Daryl was accused of harassing Tiffany at her workplace on at least one occasion, and this included stalking her at work. In another incident, someone had tampered with Tiffany's gas tank by putting ammonia in it. These acts of harassment indicated that Daryl was not willing to accept the end of their relationship, and he was willing to take it too far. Tiffany was now a single mother of four, balancing raising her twins and her boys, working and trying really hard to rebuild a life for herself that she would be proud of after leaving Daryl. Despite the challenges that relatives say that Tiffany was having, she was relieved to be out of an unhealthy relationship and looking forward to a fresh start. In the summer of 2015, Tiffany reconnected with an old friend who was a single father himself. His identity isn't publicly shared in case you're wondering why I'm not mentioning his name, but this friendship blossomed into something more. By mid 2015, a few months before her death, Tiffany had begun dating this friend and he became her new boyfriend. According to Tiffany's brother Darrell, this man respected Tiffany, deeply cared for her, and thought that she was a wonderful mom. For Tiffany, this new relationship seemed like a chance once again at happiness with someone who really appreciated her. But this new relationship unfortunately became a massive source of contention with Daryl, Tiffany's ex. Friends later said that Daryl couldn't stand to see Tiffany moving on with someone else or even just being happy, hinting at jealousy that would have tragic consequences. By October 2015, Tiffany was living in the Chapel Tree Circle apartments in Brandon, Florida, in apartment 1807. In the background, tensions with Daryl continued to grow. They shared custody of the twins, and disputes over the girls and finances seemed like a constant battle. In fact, just one day before Halloween, Tiffany and Daryl were in court over custody issues and child support. The court had awarded Tiffany full custody of their twin daughters on October 30th, 2015, and ordered Daryl to pay child support to Tiffany. This outcome for Tiffany was a relief because it meant stability for her girls and financial help while raising them. But for Daryl, this was seen as a major blow. According to later statements from investigators, Daryl was extremely upset that the court sided with her and that he would be legally obligated to support his daughters for many years to come. As Detective Michael Blair of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office put it, from Daryl's perspective, this was just creating more issues for him. Tiffany getting full custody was a massive trigger to Daryl's anger, and this all happened 24 hours before the murder of Tiffany James. Despite everything, Tiffany tried to keep a normal life for her kids. They were really excited about Halloween, and Tiffany planned a fun evening of trick-or-treating on October 31st, 2015. Her new boyfriend, who also had a child, joined them for trick-or-treating that night, and then they planned to go stay at his house afterwards. None of them could have imagined the horror that was about to unfold. Saturday, October 31st, 2015 was supposed to be fun and festive for Tiffany and the family. That night, Tiffany took her daughters out trick-or-treating in the neighborhood. This year it fell on a weekend and the weather in Florida was perfect for the holiday. The girls, excited and dressed in their Halloween costumes as a police officer and fairy, went door to door collecting candy with their mother and Tiffany's new boyfriend. Halloween is all about the kids, and Tiffany, being the devoted mom that she was, really wanted her children to enjoy it fully, so she actually chose to go to a nearby neighborhood that was known for handing out the big candy bars. They got started in the early evening hours by visiting houses, and then eventually they landed at a Halloween party together. As the night went on, Tiffany planned to bring the kids back home and then change out of their costumes, and then they would go spend the night at her boyfriend's house. This meant that Tiffany would briefly return to her apartment complex, then her boyfriend should expect to see them back at his home shortly after. It was about 11 p.m. when Tiffany and the twins arrived back at the apartment. The twins were still dressed in their Halloween costumes, tired from trick-or-treating, but still excited to look over their candy haul before they left to head out for the night. At that same time, unbeknownst to Tiffany, Daryl Williams was lying in wait nearby. Multiple pieces of evidence later indicated that Daryl had been tracking Tiffany's movements through that night. Tiffany's boyfriend reported seeing a black car following them as they were trick-or-treating with a Jason hockey mask hanging on the car's rearview mirror, which he thought might be Daryl's vehicle. The presence of the mask was very creepy, and the investigators couldn't believe this when her boyfriend shared this with them. Jason is the mass killer character from Friday the 13th horror films, if you didn't know, and although Halloween night meant that many people would be dressed up in costumes, her boyfriend felt that this was very eerie. As Tiffany and her girls approached their apartment door at about 11 p.m., it was dimly lit and quiet. Daryl then emerged from the darkness wearing the full Halloween costume of Jason and armed with a shotgun. He walked directly towards Tiffany and the children and did something horrifying. The neighbor was watching a Halloween movie when she heard a sudden loud bang or boom and felt her apartment door blow open from the force of it. Despite being afraid, she got up and looked outside to see what was happening. In the corridor, she saw her neighbor Tiffany lying on the ground and a person in a Halloween costume holding a shotgun standing over her. The neighbor confirmed that the person standing over Tiffany was wearing the hockey mask of Jason, and in that split second, the neighbor realized that this wasn't a prank, it was real. Could you imagine seeing something like that? The neighbor was terrified and backed up into her apartment and quickly locked the door, but she continued to hear what was happening outside. She then heard a couple more shots ring out. The perpetrator fled the scene, and witnesses later said that they saw a figure in a costume running away from the apartment complex immediately after the gunfire. Some neighbors spotted a silver or light colored sedan speeding away around that time, not a black car like the boyfriend had seen following them earlier. No one at the scene managed to get a good look at the license plate or the man in the costume at that moment. Unfortunately, the apartment complex also had no active security cameras. The neighbor heard silence, followed by a soft knocking and crying at the door. She peeked and quickly realized that the twins were standing there, completely terrified. She let them in. Both of the girls were completely covered in their mother's blood. It was all over their hair and in their clothing, and the blood projected so forcefully that they found blood in one of the girls' ears. Those details are just sickening to think about. While the neighbor cared for the girls and called 911, other neighbors also alerted authorities after hearing those multiple gunshots. Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies received several 911 calls around 11 and dispatched officers and emergency medical responders, and they arrived quickly. They found Tiffany James alive but gravely injured from the shotgun blasts. Given the severe nature of her wounds, which we will go into here shortly, Tiffany was in critical condition. Paramedics rushed Tiffany to Tampa General Hospital. The fact that she was even transported to the hospital suggests that she had to have had some pulse or some signs of life at the scene while they were fighting to save her. She was a fighter. Sadly, despite their best efforts, Tiffany succumbed to her injuries at the hospital, and she was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. I'm sure that some of you are wondering how she could have even survived before help arrived, but if you didn't know, the brainstem actually controls most of our autonomic functions, which plays a significant role here. So, depending on the location of the gunshot or the area of trauma, she could maintain a heartbeat for some time, especially if the brainstem was not struck. According to her brother Darrell, one of the shotgun blasts struck Tiffany directly in the face. A shotgun blast to the face at close range would cause massive trauma and bleeding, and it explains why Tiffany's twin daughters were found covered in their mother's blood. That is a horrifying image to think of, and it breaks my heart for them. I cannot imagine the terror and confusion that those little girls experienced. One moment they're coming home from trick-or-treating with mom, and then the next moment a masked man who is their own father is heinously shooting their mother right in front of them. Back at the apartment complex, deputies began to canvass the area and gather evidence and witnesses. They secured the crime scene, marking shell casings and any other physical evidence left behind, including Tiffany's purse and belongings. The children, who fortunately were unharmed, were taken into protective care, and Tiffany's family, including her Aunt Vicki Pittman, rushed to be by the twins' side. Neighbors who moments before were handing out candy were now witnesses to a horrific murder scene, and many wondered if the person in the costume was a stranger or maybe someone that the victim knew. For Tiffany's family, this news was shattering. Relatives rushed to the scene and to the hospital only to learn that Tiffany had died and the twins were still in their blood-soaked clothing. Tiffany's boys, who were not present at the scene, had to be informed that their mother would not be coming home. Halloween would forever be an anniversary of loss for them. While I was researching today's case, I actually read that the boys currently still request time off of work during the week of Halloween because they still struggle so much during this time, and that breaks my heart. Suspicion quickly fell on Tiffany's ex, Daryl. Before losing consciousness, Tiffany might not have had a chance to identify her killer, but the circumstances of an ex partner with a really bad breakup and custody battle gave detectives a clear lead. When detectives reached out to Tiffany's family that night, they were informed about Daryl's history of threats and violence towards her. Within 24 hours of the murder, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office publicly named Daryl Eugene Williams as a person of interest in this case. Tiffany's body was examined by the medical examiner in Hillsborough County, even though it was clear how she died. She was shot at least once in the upper body and chest area and once in the face, according to both police records and the family. The full autopsy report was not made public, but as a former trauma nurse, I can speak to some of what that damage may have looked like based on the family's statements. A shotgun blast at close range can cause large, gaping wounds with multiple projectiles spreading through tissue. Vital organs like the heart, lungs, and major blood vessels can be severely perforated and damaged, and this would explain why she quickly went into critical condition. The medical examiner documents the size of the wounds, the shape, and the presence of shotgun pellets, and the chest shot alone could have been fatal by causing catastrophic bleeding or internal hemorrhaging, in addition to causing irreversible damage to her vital organs. A shot in the face would cause severe destruction of facial structures, skull fractures, and brain injuries depending on the trajectory. If the pellets entered the brain or severed major blood vessels in the neck, that would have been instantly fatal. We do know that she still had a heartbeat per the paramedics on the way to the hospital, though, so my suspicion is that her brainstem and major vessels were likely missed by the bullets and shrapnel. Now let's go back to the crime scene right after the shooting on October 31st, 2015, when responding deputies and detectives began interviewing witnesses at the scene. The neighbor who witnessed the masked man with the shotgun provided a description saying a person in a full Halloween costume was seen holding the gun over Tiffany. They couldn't really identify the person because of the disguise, but she gave details about the costume and the sequence of events that did help investigators. The neighbor also added that the perpetrator was around 5 feet 7 inches and about 200 to 220 pounds. Family members that were on scene and caring for the girls and those that received calls to hear the heartbreaking news all immediately pointed directly at Daryl. Tiffany's brother and aunt talked about the recent custody problems and about Daryl's previous threats. You will be shocked when you hear who also ended up pointing their finger at Daryl too. Diamond and Denia were brought into the Children's Advocacy Center at Hillsborough, and they were interviewed separately to make sure they didn't influence each other. Denia immediately shut down and was very emotional and asked to go home. Diamond was emotional but still very detailed about what happened on Halloween. This just goes to show you how traumatic events can impact us all so differently, and our ability to communicate under duress is also different after the fact. She said that she wasn't sure who hurt her mommy, but her dad argued with her mom a lot, and she also shared with investigators that her dad had pictures of the inside of Tiffany's apartment and mommy's new boyfriend's house. That was very concerning for investigators. Denia verified that their dad did have photos of the outside and inside of both of their homes when asked about it, and upon digging, the investigators found out that this was because Daryl had hired a PI during their custody battles. By the next morning, November 1st, Daryl Williams was officially a wanted man. The sheriff's office announced him as a person of interest, alerting the public and other law enforcement to be on the lookout. Now they just needed to find him. Investigators showed up to Daryl's home. As the investigators were approaching, one of his adult daughters walked up the driveway toward them. Daryl's daughter was informed that Tiffany was murdered, so they needed to speak to her dad, and she was visibly upset. The investigators asked if she knew where her father was, and what she said next shocked them. His own daughter said that he wasn't at home, but then she described his history of violence and intimidation voluntarily. She said, quote, "I know what my father is capable of. If something has happened to Tiffany, then my father is your prime suspect," end quote. Can you believe that? Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on this, because I found this so surprising. His daughter then shared that Daryl had once aimed a gun at her mother's face during an argument, and they couldn't believe it. This awful story indicates that Daryl had a known pattern of using threats or violence against women in his life long before things ever had escalated with Tiffany. Next, they went to Mosaic to talk to his boss and see if he was there and find out about his behavior in the workplace. His boss said that he's a really hard worker, so much so that he always picked up when others were calling out sick. Any guesses what evening he said he couldn't pick up an extra shift, though? If you guessed Halloween, you are correct. One big break came through investigating Daryl's relationships as well. Detectives learned that Daryl had a current girlfriend named Rosalind Washington. Realizing that Rosalind could be connected, law enforcement checked for her residence. Upon arrival, they located Daryl's black vehicle at Rosalind's house in the area of Riverview, Florida, which was just a few miles from the crime scene, and I'll show you the distance between them on a map. This was a significant lead, and they hoped that he would be there since his vehicle was. When officers first approached Rosalind, she became visibly anxious. Daryl was not there, but Rosalind said that they had spent the night watching Halloween movies and passing out candy together. She added that evening, Daryl called it a night early and went to bed, but Rosalind stayed up. She ran out to grab food and was gone about an hour to an hour and a half and returned between 9:30 and 10, and he was still there asleep. She reported that she went to sleep and woke up at 1 and he was still asleep on the couch. Did anyone pick up on the amount of inconsistencies just in that one statement, though? Just wait, because a lot more is about to unravel. The police went through Rosalind's GPS and phone records to try to corroborate her statement, and everything that they discovered completely invalidated her story, and cell phone tower pings put her at Tiffany's apartment complex around the time of the murder. The investigators began to wonder why Rosalind lied. Did she do this herself while Daryl was asleep? Maybe out of jealousy of his ex? She didn't physically match the description of the perpetrator, though, with the exception of the car fleeing because she drove a light-colored sedan. When confronted with this evidence of the cell phone and GPS activity, Rosalind's facade and stories quickly crumbled. Eventually, she confessed to her role in the incident on November 21st when they detained Rosalind for a deeper interview. They showed her a map of her phone pings to shut down her story, and they outright asked her what happened. This direct approach is what caused the breakdown. She was hysterical, on the ground crying, and the investigator told her to get out if she wouldn't tell the truth. So she left. On November 24th, Rosalind then came back with her attorney to the police station so she would talk. She admitted that she did drive Daryl to Tiffany's and said that the whole prior version of the story was mostly true, but then Daryl asked her to go do something really quick. He led her to Tiffany's, and Rosalind said that he asked to go over there because he wanted to see the twins' Halloween costumes. It does seem reasonable for a parent to want to go see their child on a holiday, but do we believe her story now with it changing multiple times? Just wait. When Tiffany pulled up, Daryl got out of the car. He put on a mask and pulled a gun from his waistband, and she drove away because she panicked. She said that she drove straight home. When she got home, she said that he was already there and she had no clue how he got there. Could a shotgun have even been hidden in his waistband, though? I don't think so. Rosalind lived 16 minutes away, so how did he get there before her on foot if she didn't drive him back? The officer said that they still didn't believe she was being honest with them, so she once again left and came back from the police station. But this time, Rosalind admitted to taking Daryl to Tiffany's apartment and then added that she heard them arguing, followed by Tiffany screaming before a gunshot rang out. She lied and changed her story now for the third time, which would make it really difficult for any jury to trust her. Rosalind Washington's admission was a crucial piece of the puzzle, though. It not only placed Daryl at the scene as the shooter, but it also explained the getaway vehicle and the driver. Shockingly, Rosalind was not charged for her involvement. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below, because I personally was shocked by that. On November 24th, 2015, just over 3 weeks after the murders, authorities finally caught up to Daryl at his job. Hillsborough deputies moved in and arrested Daryl Eugene Williams while he was actually working inside of the plant, and the way that they went about this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. Upon arrival, the officers met with the boss and informed them that they were going to be arresting Daryl that night. The manager provided them with the necessary safety gear to go inside of the plant disguised so that he wouldn't be alarmed or run. Their plan was a success, and he was taken into custody at about 7:30 p.m. that night. Daryl Williams was booked into Hillsborough County Jail on a charge of first-degree murder with a firearm in the murder of Tiffany James. Given the nature of the crime, a judge ordered that he be held without bond and he would remain in custody until trial. At the time of the arrest, the sheriff's office gave a statement to media confirming the capture and arrest of Daryl Williams. Both the family and the public felt an immediate sigh of relief. The press, which had been covering the manhunt the entire time, also reported on this, and I will try to insert a clip if I can.
And the man who is behind bars tonight is the same person detectives questioned initially after this happened nearly a month ago. Tiffany James was almost home after celebrating Halloween when she was shot twice. Her twin daughters, who are 7, saw the brutal murder. Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies say their father, Daryl Williams, pulled the trigger twice before running away. Tonight, he is charged with first-degree murder with a firearm. As you can imagine, this has been difficult on Tiffany's family, but they told me they received an overwhelming amount of support from the sheriff's office. They say they are thankful for Detective Garcia, Detective Blair, and Corporal Bailey, who kept them in the loop about the case the whole time.
When he told us, I mean, everybody probably in the neighborhood heard us jumping up and just crying. We get honor to God because my mama prayed every night, every night. I'm hearing my mom up all night when my mom is not sleeping.
The prosecution, so Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office, and the defense needed time to prepare, and you guys, this took 6 years. There were many witnesses like the twins, the neighbors, Rosalind, and forensic experts, and pieces of evidence too to analyze, including ballistics, autopsy, and phone records. During these years, Daryl remained in jail. Tiffany's family continued to mourn and care for her children, and media coverage was relatively quiet for a while after the initial arrest, but picked back up again closer to the trial. As the trial date finally approached in early 2021, an interesting and bizarre defense strategy came to light. Williams' defense counsel indicated that they wanted to pursue a theory that would cast doubt on Daryl's guilt by implicating someone else, Daryl's own adult son, Darren Williams. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Daryl wanted to paint the picture that his own son was having an affair with his girlfriend, Rosalind. He's a similar size and weight, and remember, he was in costume. The reason? Daryl said that Rosalind Washington was an evil mastermind who enlisted and seduced his son to kill Tiffany so that Rosalind and Darren could be together and access Daryl's money and assets. This story was so far beyond far-fetched and had no evidence to back it. The prosecutors and detectives couldn't find anything whatsoever to support any of Daryl's claims. The lead prosecutor, Scott Harmon, described this defense narrative as completely false, urging the judge to forbid these types of baseless allegations unless the defense could actually show real evidence to support it. Harmon argued that unless the defense could in good faith tie Darren to the crime, they shouldn't be allowed to distract the jury with these insane, harmful claims. The defense lawyer insisted on their right to present alternative theories, saying basically that any possible motive, like money or a relationship between Rosalind and Darren, could be floated to create reasonable doubt. They wanted to say that maybe Darren was the one who actually did the shooting, wearing the costume, not Daryl, as a part of this big scheme. This defense theory is a classic attempt to cast blame somewhere else. The judge at the pretrial hearing did not make an immediate ruling on whether or not the defense could use this theory at trial, but it did foreshadow that the trial could become really complicated if they proceeded. It also meant that Daryl was still not intending to plead guilty at that point, and his team was willing to fight to come up with anything they could for a defense. Imagine what a trial would have looked like. Tiffany's 7-year-old twins, who were then about 12 or 13 years old in 2021, would potentially have to testify about what they saw that night, or at least hear it described in court. Rosalind Washington would take the stand as the star witness for the prosecution, sharing how she drove Daryl and heard him shoot Tiffany. The defense would then try to smear Rosalind's credibility, calling her a liar and a cheater who set Daryl up, and they might also call Darren, Daryl's son, to the stand and try to insinuate that he had motives too. It could have become a complete circus of accusations that would be very painful and traumatizing for the entire family. The state attorney's office made a compassionate but controversial decision. They offered Daryl Williams a plea to try to avoid all of that. Doing this meant that they could resolve the case without subjecting the children to testify. It also prevented the defense from having a platform to spin their love triangle theory, which could confuse the jury and drag the kids and Rosalind through the mud. The plea deal that Daryl accepted was for second-degree murder with a sentence of 20 years in prison. 20 years was a significant drop from a possible life sentence or the death penalty. That's a relatively lenient outcome for such a brutal crime, and Tiffany's family felt deeply conflicted and almost divided about this. When the plea arrangement was reached, Tiffany's brother Darrell voiced the family's mixed feelings by saying that they were disappointed because Daryl shot his sister in the face with a shotgun, and this didn't feel like justice to them. He added that Daryl's act was so heinous that coward is far too good of a word for him. The family wanted to see Daryl fully held accountable for what he had done. But ultimately, They agreed to avoid any more damage to the girls, avoiding placing them back on the stand in this situation because it would have been so traumatizing to them. A 20-year sentence for a man who was 49 at the time means that he might see freedom again someday in his late 60s with plenty of life still ahead of him. The twins will be in their 20s at that time. It's not surprising that he would accept that rather than risk never getting out of prison or death, but that time frame seems so short when he viciously stole Tiffany's life. Something that really haunts me in these cases that we've been covering is that each person that is murdered has a different role and significance to everyone in their life. When a person's life gets stolen, so many other people's lives are forever changed, and sentences never account for those. Tiffany's children and loved ones don't get justice for the harm that this has caused them, and in my opinion, that just doesn't feel fair. Tiffany's celebration of life was held on November 14th, 2015 at Wilson Funeral Home in Tampa, and she was laid to rest with all of her family by her side. It was clear how deeply loved Tiffany is, not only by her family and friends, but also her community. Daryl himself never gave an explanation or apology in court for why he murdered Tiffany. He did not speak to justify or deeply apologize for his actions at the plea either. He simply took the deal. With the plea deal in place, the judge sentenced Daryl Williams to 20 years in state prison per their agreement. Tiffany James's story is a heartbreaking example of a toxic and violent relationship that led to murder, but she is so much more than that. She was a loving, driven, successful mother who tried desperately to free herself from a bad relationship and was rebuilding her life, only to have it brutally cut short by the person who once claimed to love her. The fact that it happened in front of her children on Halloween adds an unfathomable layer of tragedy, and those girls not only lost their mom, but also their dad in one quick moment. As always, I'm sending Tiffany and her babies and her family all of my love. Thank you all from the very bottom of my heart for spending time with me today. I appreciate each and every one of you more than I can express, and seeing some of you guys come back week after week brings me so much joy. I genuinely look forward to catching up in the comments with you guys, so thank you. Please take good care of yourselves this week and do some extra self-care. Nurse's orders. I'll see you next weekend. Bye.